News Talk KBOI covers the Idaho legislature, all of the issues, all of the debates. Today we have Idaho State representatives joining Kasper and Chris on News Talk KBOI.
He is Chris Walton. I'm Mike Kasper. And in the studio with us, I'd like to welcome back again Democratic Representative Steve Berch, District 15 in Boise, third term in the House, member of the House Business Committee, Education Committee, and member of the Local Government Committee. Welcome in. Once again, good to see you.
Great. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
I'm going to start things off here. We're almost 2 months into the legislative session. And as of yesterday, there have only been two bills that have passed through both House and the Senate and have been signed by the governor. Why are we off to such a slow start? And is this something that's normal?
Well, you know, one of the things that's very different about this year is how large the freshman class is. I mean, we have over 40 new people who've never been in the legislature before. And a lot of people is trying to feel out who's who, what's what, where do they stand on various issues and so forth. And so part of it, I think, is a function of just a bunch of new people trying to learn the process and understand things. But I would agree with you. Things are going very slowly. And I think, you know, there are a variety of things that happen in the legislature. We look at bills and so forth. But there is a process behind the scenes where people definitely want to make certain things happen. And there's this process of holding hostages. Bills get held hostage. So, for example, when the governor says he wants to, and the state wants to have his launch program, well, that basically tells legislative leaders there's something the governor wants. What do we want? What do we want to trade for? And so bills, and this has happened before. We had this last year with a bill that would have provided $6 million for early literacy from the federal government. That was Senate Bill 1193. That was held hostage, and that hostage was actually killed because the Senate wouldn't give the House what they wanted, which was to be able to throw librarians in jail. And so the House didn't give the Senate what they wanted. And so the way to find out these bills is watch bills that continue to get held. You know, they get pushed out on the voting calendar till the end of the session. That's one of the signs that you maybe have a hostage out there.
Interesting. So is that part of the reason why we haven't reached anything, or other than the fact that you've had three different bills on taxes, property tax relief? But is that kind of part of the reason why nothing has happened really on that, other than, hey, here are three things we're looking at?
Well, that's true. And what has also happened, particularly with property tax bills, and from my experience, they get held to the very, very end of the session because they wind up being extremely complicated. We had one bill, House Bill 389, that had 7 or 8 different moving parts. It wasn't introduced. It was introduced into a committee called Ways and Means. It's the only committee that doesn't take public testimony. It was introduced in the late March at 9 in the morning, went directly to the second reading calendar at 10 o'clock. Then the rules were suspended. It went to the third reading calendar. Then the rules were suspended again, went to the front of the third reading calendar, then was voted on, went to the Senate. They voted. It was on the governor's desk by the end of the day. No public testimony, no opportunity for legislators to actually know what they were voting on, no opportunity for stakeholders to analyze it and be able to provide input.
But you could go home and say, hey, look, we did something on property tax.
And everyone was tired. It's the end of the session. They want to go home. And so I am concerned that a lot of these property tax bills are being, it's going to be taking so long for them to actually get in front of us.
In the Education Committee, it seems like the reports are that a lot of minutia is being discussed. Is that frustrating at all?
Yeah, because there's two things going on with in general. I'm not saying the Education Committee, but education in general. I mean, voters are being assailed with an alphabet soup of inflammatory rhetoric, a CRT, SEL, DEI, ESG, and really being told by a lot of outside sources that they shouldn't trust public schools. At the same time, what we have in the legislature right now is what I've been told, dozens of brand new lobbyists here to basically push a voucher bill. And you always got to ask yourself, a lobbyist isn't here to not make money for their clients. Okay, and there are incredibly powerful, wealthy forces behind trying to privatize public education, and so these ESA bills, education savings account bills, which are really one of a friendly label for vouchers, are really designed to take as much of a $2 billion taxpayer money to fund our public schools and turn it over to the private, as much of it as they can, to the private sector, and to get voters to think that to try to show voters that their choice is better than a public school choice, by starving public education and demeaning teachers and using all these alphabet soup acronyms to try to get them to think that they shouldn't trust schools.
We got about a minute here. I do want to get to this. As you're going through this, and I know as we talked off air, you're somebody that knocks on a heck of a lot of doors in your district. What have you found are the priorities? How well do they match with what the legislature is doing and the legislature's priorities versus what the voters are telling you?
Well, the voters have made it very clear year after year. The top priorities I'm hearing are property taxes, cost of living, and under that is housing, wages, and so forth, infrastructure, health care, especially mental health services. That's really surprising how that touches so many people's lives, and access to public lands. Those have been the top 5 issues for years. Kind of bills that I've been seeing this year and previous years is throwing librarians and doctors into jail, suing teachers, basically trying to legislate transgendered people out of existence, and taking money away from our schools. There is such a disconnect. And this may be part of the problem, is that when you have people who run for office just based on a letter next to their name and they never talk to the voters, they wind up themselves wind up becoming disconnected from their constituents themselves. If everyone out and talked to voters all the time, I think we'd have a different mindset in the legislature.
Representative Steve Berch, our time is up with you today. Short time, but appreciate you taking a few minutes and talking with us. I know you have a meeting coming up at 9 o'clock also this morning. Great to see you. Thanks for coming in today.
Thank you. Thank you so much for having me. I appreciate it.
KBOI News Time, 8:45.